Warning: this program contains images of people who are deceased.
Were you stationed at Bachelor?
Yeah. Just before the first raid, we were on, some on main Drome Darwin, some on civil Drome Darwin. And they pulled us out in February, very early in February, and we went to Daly Waters, and we were going to set up operations there. And we were sent down 12 aircraft, 12 pilots, a couple of navigators, fitters and airframe fitters, engine fitters, armourers. I think we had a cook, things like that to start up this camp. But we didn't stay very long because the water was poisonous and we all got very severe dysentery, and so we packed it in and went back to Darwin, and our hangar was gone, and that's so we slept on the concrete where the hangar had been. Then we went down to Bachelor and we set up camp there. And we were there for, can't think when, but we shifted from there down to Pell Field. We were down there a few months, I suppose, and then we came back to Bachelor. But different things had happened while we were away. The Yanks were coming in and out, and they had a camp on the western side of the railway line. We were up on the east, near where the town is now. As you approach, you're going west from the highway, and on the northern side of the road when you get there was that little village and what they've got there now. Well, we were on the southern side of that road. Well, when we came back the second time, we went over, across the railway line. There was a runway used to cross the railway line for about, I think 7,500 yards, something like that, west of the line.
Sounds dangerous.
Oh, it's interesting. I think it was one of the very few aerodromes in the world where you had to look out for trains.
Yeah, I reckon. And so you were camped on one side of the line and the Yanks were on the other?
Not while we were there, though.
Oh, okay, yeah. At a different
The Yanks
time.
were near us, so we had the remnants of the 19th Bombardment Group that got run out of the Philippines in about 6 old B-17. The early ones, and they lived with us in our camp there for several months, and then they shipped them back to the States as instructors. But this mob went over the line and they set up a good sort of a camp there, and we took that over. We had, some places had concrete floors, some tents, and we had a officer and aircrew mess, and Carmody and I started in. We set up, claimed a nice concrete floor.
So was Walker there with you as well?
Blackjack was our CO, but he left in probably about April, May, something like that. I've got some photos of what our living quarters were at Bachelor. That was our first time there.
Could you just describe what your mission was that day?
Carmody and I were going to Kalumburu, they call it now. We called it Drysdale River Mission.
Yeah.
And we were going out there, and in the back we had a good toolkit. And we were going out to there to salvage the guns and instruments and anything else we could get off a Wirraway that had pranged out there on takeoff, I think. I don't know who did it.
Yep.
Before my time, apparently. And the aircraft we were with was Blackjack Walker was the CO, and he had an army officer, I think he was a lieutenant. And they were going to Broome. We were travelling in pairs to Wyndham, and we were going to refuel there. They'd go on to Broome, and Carmody and I would go on up to the Drysdale River. Well, the route we took was from Bachelor. We went over Port Keats, and then set course from Port Keats to Windham, as that's about the line we were flying over the Gulf. If I remember right, it was about, I don't know, 15, 20 mile out.
So the oil just started happening and you lost power.
First indication was oil on the windscreen, and then she started to lose power. And see, we didn't have at that time a May West life vest. We didn't have a dinghy, and we didn't have oxygen. And we were going halfway to Timor on 3.5, 4 hour patrols, anti-sub patrols.
And was the cockpit open?
Yeah, I stupid opened it to see what was going on and got a place full of oil.
That's how you got the oil and the glasses and on the face, and it would have been hot.
It was hot.
Yeah, so and, you could still manage to see, and then just started deciding to head to the coast as quick as you could.
I headed for the coast as soon as I saw oil.
Yep.
And I alerted Carmody to put the stick in, and he steadied it while I got my eyes working again. Yep. And so we went in from there.
Do you know roughly what direction you would have been travelling?
Oh, I just turned to south and just, that's Australia. That was what I was looking for, something firm.
As you came into the marsh, could you see that it was mud, and that was the reason you decided to keep the wheels up?
Well, I was aiming for a bare patch.
Yep.
Looked like it had been cultivated or something like that, you know, it was bare of any growth.
Yes.
And that's what I was aiming for, and the idea was I'd drag it and have a look at it, and then put it down on the wheels if I thought it was all right. But by the time I got in that place, she didn't have the power for me to drag it. If I was going in, I'd have to put the wheels down and go for it, not knowing what it was like.
Yep.
And the fact that if you flipped her over and somebody got a broken arm or a broken leg, a bit sticky, so I abandoned that, and she was dying. She probably wouldn't have got in with the wheels down anyway. But I just turned it west and paralleled with the hard stuff and let it drop. There's a couple of photos of the aircraft as it was when we dropped them.
Oh, really? Do you remember the actual landing, the impact?
Soft as you like.
Yeah. Was it wet? The mud was wet at the time.
Yes, yeah.
It wasn't covered in water?
No, it was out of water.
Yeah.
But Carmody, when it stopped, he said, "You fatty mongrel, Dwyer, I was just going to congratulate you on a nice smooth landing." And he looked over the side, got a big dollop of mud in his face.
Thrown up by the prop or something, I suppose.
Yes, as she was sure that she did. Blackjack abandoned his run down to, and he overflew us a few times and dropped us a water bag, and he knew where we were, whistled him up, and he came in and watched us put her on the mud and that, and then flew off to Windham to try and organise this pickup, you know. We always wore, there was a pair of shorts and a pair of flying boots, and sometimes wore a shirt and sometimes we didn't.
And that's what you would have been basically wearing when you landed on the marsh.
Yeah, and that was pretty damn stupid. Yeah. But it didn't happen anymore, because I tell you, we made up a survival kit and sealed it into an ammunition tin. And we carried that strapped down in the back of the aircraft.
So you learned your lesson?
Yes.
So nothing broke, like the canopy was all intact when you landed?
The whole aircraft. If she'd been out near civilization, they'd put the jacks under her, stood her up onto her wheels, put another motor in her, and she'd have flown away.
Yeah.
You'll see the photos of it. She was undamaged.
Yeah, it's amazing to look at it
big
now.
Soft mud and that, you know, it would have done almost no damage. You'll see that the blades of the prop were slightly bent back. That indicates that she had no power. If you hit with power, your blades go forward, because it's an air screw. It's screwing through the air, pulling the thing, and if it hits something under power, the blades are pulled forward. And she hadn't seized because all three blades are bent.
Which means they were turning still.
She was just windmilling, but hadn't actually seized.
Loss of oil.
The oil. She never had any oil for the last probably the 10 minutes of a flight.
Did you know the bore was there from a map?
Yes, that was sent to us, this thing, and it was actually marked on our map.
Right, so you knew where to head to.
We were told to go there.
Were you still in radio contact?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, in 1935 or 36, I was at boarding school in Brisbane, and we had a visit from the Reverend John Flynn.
Yep.
And he gave us a lecture and so forth, and he had these magic lamp and things, the slides, showing us that, telling us about it, and he told us the history of the pedal radio. And that's what they were conversing with, from Wyndham to Carlton Hill.
Yep.
The pickup was organised in Wyndham, but it was operated out of Carlton Hill, and Charlie Bretlove from over at Lejeune led it.
So the toolkit, you didn't take the toolkit with you then?
No one ever mentioned the toolkit.
Yeah, I wonder if Ningbing ended up with that. That's probably something that they would have found.
Oh yes,
you know,
well they went out from
of.
Ningbing.
Yeah.
A fellow named H.M.A.S.Perth Marsh was the man at Ningbing when we went in there. The manager wasn't there, he was away on business. And he got all the information where it was. And I think he and the manager went out there with native stockmen and that, and they got quite a bit of stuff. The manager of Carlton Hill at that time was a man named Percy Bretlove.
Yep.
But he wasn't there, he was in Wyndham. He was floodbound in Wyndham. But his brother Charlie Bretlove came from over, he was manager of Lejeune, but he'd come across to Carlton Hill to see what was going on, like in the way of guerrilla band and that sort of thing, which they had organised. Early in March, she still had the red dot on a roundel. I can't think when they got painted out. The roundel on the aircraft, the red, white and blue, was a red centre, white next one and the blue surround. Well, because of the Jap red ball, and the trigger-happy Yanks, they painted those red centres out, blue and white. The whole thing was white centre, and then they...
That's on the tail, is it?
On the fuselage. You'll see it on one of the photos. I thought it was later than that, but it couldn't have been because the photo clearly shows you still had a red centre. With these photos that I've got, I've tried to get them where you can actually see the armament.
As you walked away, would it be difficult to walk through, I'd imagine?
Oh, mostly it was. We skirted the marsh much as we could, and until we got across that, well, we stayed one night in the swamp there on a bit of an island.
We approached the wreck from the west. Now, this time we decided to drive straight down to Cleanskin Bore to film that area that you walked across. And we filmed what we probably think is where you would have camped, the high spot on the marsh. So there were trees on it. Yes, or boabs on it. And we set a fire, all the mosquitoes that didn't carry away. So we started a fire. The mosquitoes were bad, so we pulled, there was that swamp grass, you know, and we pulled great lots of that and made big mounds. And Carmody got in one, and I covered him over, and I burrowed a hole in mine and pulled some in over the top. Hey, that's good, eh? Yeah, that's real good. Did it work?
Yeah, for about 5 minutes.
Until they find you.
Then they got in with us, and that wasn't good. So we got up and we put that grass on the fire. And sat in there crying our eyes out.
Got the smoke happening.
And every damn beast that could get there came to join us. And there was scrubber cattle and God knows what else was there. And they were standing in the fire and on the fire and on us. In the morning, I woke up, there was a pair of geese going down into the water, but we got 18
young ones. They couldn't fly.
Little goslings.
Yeah, and we got 18 of them. And
well, they would have been magpie geese or something, maybe.
yeah, I suppose they were. Yeah.
The magpie geese are pretty prevalent out there.
Yes, now I think of it, they would have been magpies. But anyway, we got 18 little ones.
Yeah.
Not properly feathered, they couldn't fly. And
so they were still alive, the 18?
Yeah, and we butchered a couple and that, and then
had a feed.
I led them, what we had left, we led them like dogs on little strings of the parachute.
Yeah,
and when they'd hang their wings and that and looked like they couldn't go any further, we'd stop and make a little fire and cook them up. We were a couple of days, got to this bore, I think it was the Cleanskin, and I got a bit of sunstroke, I'd say, getting there, and I was hanging back, and Carmody went on and pinpointed the bore and come back out to get me. And while he'd been in, and he wrote on the side of the tank, we were there this day, whatever the date was, and came out back to me, and we both went into this place. And in the meantime, the party had been there and missed us and came out. They wouldn't camp in there because of mosquitoes. They came out onto another ridge somewhere or other, and we missed them. So we went in past them, and the horses, one of the horses had strayed overnight, and when they were getting their camp together to move on out to the aircraft, one of the stockmen came by and there
Found
we were.
it. There you go.
Yes. The head stockman was named Watty, and two other young stockmen, Grant was one and Joe was another. I think Joe might have been Watty's young brother. They came out, they had 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, yeah. 4 of them, I think. And they brought horses for us, and they brought spare horses because of the swamp. And a couple of pack mules. We went into Ningbing.
It's a fair hike to Ningbing from Cleanskin too, on horseback, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Would have taken a good day.
Well, yes, and we had flying boots. You couldn't get your feet in the stirrups, and we weren't horsemen. I got thrown a big black stallion through me on the way. This big Watty, the head stockman, he had this big black stallion, and it looked so comfortable when he rode it. I'm riding this other damn thing, and it was legs hanging over the side. It was no good, so I said to old Charlie, how about I use that? Oh, he wouldn't like it. I'll bugger him. I'll have it. See? So he reluctantly gave me this thing. So we're all moving along, and I had to get off for a call of nature, and I got off and got back on again, and everything had moved up, the pack mules and everything had moved up for that time, and I just touched him gently, and he set forth, and he got a little harder and a little harder. We went through the mules, and I tried to pull him back, and then he took it and went. The last minute he was running between trees to try and wipe me off, and I'm lying out on the top of him, and these 2 stockmen ran either side of it, and they came in and jumped the horses across his path and blocked.
Right.
And he propped and went sideways, and I kept going straight ahead. Hit a tree, and but never mind. Carmody didn't like the horsing business, so he commandeered a mule. And just hung his legs over it and sat there, and he always claimed that he had some sort of a big silk handkerchief his mother had set up for him. He had that as a headdress. And riding this white mule, he always claimed that when we come in, the natives thought it was the second coming. Of course, old Percy died later that year, but his daughter, Jean, had been evacuated to Perth, but she came back. She made application to come back to the station to nurse her father. She was a nurse, and he was in ill health, and she wanted to nurse him, so they let her back into the country.
Did you meet her?
No, I didn't meet her.
No.
Then, and she married this Jack Martin, who was the manager in England later on. But at that time, well, I didn't even know Percy died. As a matter of fact, he died towards Christmas, apparently. But in my round Australia trip in 1986, I ran up against people looking for them and that, and one of the people that I met was Jean Martin, who had been Jean Pretlove.
Yeah.
And I met her down in Casterton in Victoria.
Uh-huh.
And she told me, this was in 1986, she told me it was only very recent years since she had run out of the underclothes that she made from the parachute. Yeah.
Is that right? That's amazing. Silk.
And so they got parachutes, they got the gas gun, the gas-operated gun, and they got ammunition, and they got whatever they could. But no one ever said anything about the toolbox. They'd have got that.
Yeah, you're probably right. They would have got it.
Yeah.
Somebody would have got it.
Oh yes, one of the party would have got it. The policeman in Wyndham, I think his name was Brown, the sergeant there.
Yeah.
But Carmody's logbook and the navigational instruments, dog computer and a few things like that, they took them in, got into Ningling, and this chum Marsh was there, and he looked after us. We went, and 1 or 2 nights there. Might only been one, and then he drove us in the old Chev Ute as far as he could, which wasn't far, it was about 2 miles from the homestead, and there was a river crossing and he couldn't get through that. And we got back on the horses there and went on into Carlton Hill, and
right.
I think we were there, well, Percy Pretlove had got back out by that time, and I think we were there 6 or 7 days.
Right.
They looked after us very well, set us up with the cowboy gear that they had in their store for their stockmen, the check shirts and the khaki pants and that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and,
you became one of the crew for a few days.
Looked like it, yeah. And then the 3 aircraft came over, and buzzed the homestead and dropped a note to say they'd selected a landing field a couple of miles away. And we went out there with in the ute, in a ute.
Yeah. What sort of plane was it that picked you up?
3 Wirraways from the squadron.
Oh, righto.
And with 2 empty seats, you see, one for me and one for Carmody.
We'll keep you informed as what happens, but we'd like to see something happen as for the town official opening, and it'd be really good if you could make it.
Yeah,
we'll see as we get closer.
Don't leave it too long.
I'm thinking pretty soon, really.
Where is it happening? In
I'd
Kununurra?
say before the 20th of March next year.
Yeah?
Well, 20th of March could be a good day, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's the day it happens.
Yeah.